All right, welcome to 4 a.m. Thoughts. This is where me and Rick get a chance to sit here and we get to talk about issues going on in the outdoors, any subject, any topic for about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the topic. Today, we're going to talk about the future of hunting, what it looks like in 20 years, where it's going, and where we think it's at right now.
For the record, this is coffee.
It is coffee, yes. We're drinking coffee. We're at work on a break. So here's what's going on. Right as you see it right now, since you've been in the hunting world now for how many years? 5?
Yeah, I mean,
roughly
going on 5, yeah.
What have you seen different from your first year to now as far as the people? Because we're hunting a lot of public, a little bit of private. What do you see on the public land versus when you first started? Because you started in COVID.
Well, I mean, let's start with private land because we had a really good spot. My second year of getting into bow hunting, and then that third year came around, and Jeff and I went out there, and come to find out, we ran into some guys that ended up leasing that land. So, and that private land backed up to a big public spot that we were using that for access to that public land because there was no other access. And that we ran into that lease. So, and then we couldn't get on that property anymore. We even asked the guys that had the lease if we could just use it for access to the public, and they weren't about it. I mean, I understand why. That's why they leased it. I mean, you pay $5,000 for some land, you're not going to let other people go through there that haven't paid any money.
And just kick all the deer off. That makes sense.
Right. I mean, I get it.
But that's the issue.
Yeah, I mean, and you can't blame like property owners that don't hunt, that have this land, that they farm it, because they're out to make money too, just like the rest of everybody in the world. I mean, if somebody offers you $5,000 to lease your property against the guy that's offering $0, hey, can we just hunt your land? What are you going to do? You're going to take that $5,000. I mean, I personally would.
Right. I mean, it's hard to. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, so now you have that dilemma. So now we're doing a lot of public land access because we've already done it before, but now that's pretty much where we're at, almost exclusively. So saying that is, I see a lot more people on public land. Now, it's not completely out of this world 365, but during the rut, you're lucky to find a spot. And
I mean, we've kind of gotten lucky, but we have a lot of places that we can go. I mean, we've scouted upwards of 15 public land spots, in the
within like a 2-hour
southwest,
radius.
to southeast side of the city. And I mean, if we pull up and there's a guy here, we just go to another spot, and we got a lot of spots that are kind of boom, 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 all within 20, 30 minutes of each other. So.
Right, which it's rough doing that much driving, but that's what you have to do now. So that brings me to the point. That's just in the last 5 years. Fast forward to 20 years. I feel like where we're getting at is we're getting close to a Europe style of hunting, to where only the rich gets to hunt, because we're losing public land every day. A good example of it is AEP in southeastern Ohio. It used to be 60,000 acres of public land. Now it's dwindled down to about 30, and all the real estate's getting bought up by the rich because it's a playground for the rich, basically. They're leasing it, hunting it, not letting anybody else on it. Now, there's something to be said about managing land, private land. It's good in a sense that deer get to grow bigger. As long as everybody's on the same page and they're doing management practices and shooting older bucks, they're going to get to the older age class. But it pushes everybody else into the public, which brings me back to we're losing land to hunt. We're not really gaining any hunters. We're losing the land. And we're also, you have states out there like Iowa, a long time ago, they figured if they limit the out-of-state hunters by getting a draw system, the in-state hunters are going to have, top pick of the hunt. You're not going to have that much pressure. Then it's pushing all the pressure. More and more states are going to a draw system. I think the draw tag for Iowa, Kansas, I mean, you're paying a premium, $500-$600, which is a lot of money, but you're not dealing with the hunting pressure. So now going back to Ohio, with a state you can get an over-the-counter tag for like 300 something bucks, it's pushing all the guys that are driving from Indiana, West Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina. We have good deer, and they can get a reasonable license. They don't have to put it in for a draw. So we're getting flooded by out-of-state hunters, which is making it rough for the in-state guys to find a place to hunt. And it even messes the out-of-state guys up. I would rather put in for a draw and have less pressure and have a better shot at a more mature deer than go to a state. Like we went to Pennsylvania. There's a lot of hunting pressure in Pennsylvania. Everybody hunts. But there's also a lot of private land that you have access to. The land has not got leased up as bad as Ohio, Indiana, all Wisconsin, all those states, Minnesota. As you go through the Midwest, it's getting harder to find places to hunt, and it's getting harder to find a good, reasonable over-the-counter tag. So, yeah, prices are going up.
What I think it is, and I haven't been in the hunting game for as long as Jeff, but I can kind of see how it's really the older generation that's dying off, and then their kids are taking over, and they're starting to realize that money is the goal.
Well, they realize there is money to be made in the hunting industry.
Exactly. Yeah. So all the older generation, they're just out there to hunt, and then a guy comes knocking on the door, says, "Hey, can I hunt your property?" He's like, "Yeah, sure. Go out there and get you one." But now the older generation is dying off, and they're leaving this land to their kids or their grandkids. Their kids either hunt, their grandkids either hunt.
They don't live there, and they lease it.
And they lease it out to somebody.
Or they sell it to developers, and you have homes come up on it.
Homes or one of these damn Amazons that keeps popping up everywhere. I mean, the solar fields and all that stuff, it's what's taking over the public land and the private land out there.
So what do you do? And that's the big question is, what do you do? I have an answer to it. What do you think should be done about it?
I tell you what, the best thing to do is work your ass off and buy your own land.
I mean, that's
and manage your own land. If you're in a spot where you can buy your own 40, 50, 60 acres, whatever you can afford, that's the way to go.
But if you can't afford it, is what I mean.
If you can't, get some buddies that hunt, lease a piece of property, make it as inexpensive as you possibly can, and try to hunt as much public as you can, and maybe do the lease with some buddies. If you get 4 or 5 buddies and, on a nice piece of land for $5,000, each one of you pays $1,000. I know $1,000 is a lot of money.
But it isn't really.
It isn't, but it is. I mean, for a lease, I don't know, 100 acres, $5,000, it's probably not something that happens, but just for reference, I mean, you split it 5 ways, it's $1,000 a piece.
Yeah, I mean, it does happen. That's the sad part. 150 acres could go for, $5,000. That is a lot of money. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is the way everybody thinks, which is the reason why we're heading down this road, where the rich gets to hunt and the guy that doesn't have any money doesn't, and it shouldn't be that way. So here's what I think people should do. I think they should go to these council meetings and these wildlife boards on some of the states. It's either a commission, I think here in Ohio there's a wildlife committee, and they make all the DNR laws and stuff like that. They vote on it. But what the problem is, we never have people hunting representing the hunters. It's always politicians. I think you need to find out when these meetings are, and go in and have your voice heard. Another problem in Ohio in particular is, if you do own a piece of land, which a lot of people do, you can hunt that land and not have to buy a tag or a license, which means the state's not getting the money. So they're welcoming the out-of-state hunters. And that's a big problem. I would be okay, because we do hunt a little piece of property that the family owns, and I could not buy a tag or a license, but I like to go around and hunt public. We don't have that big of a property, and if everybody would have to buy a tag in your state and a license, it doesn't have to be much, but that's money that can go back in the DNR, the ODNR, and you can use that to purchase land. There's a lot of land up realty up for purchase, but the DNR don't have the money to add to the public land pool. We need to generate that money. Either we need to do a draw system in our state to limit the out-of-state hunters, so there is more room. We're already a $1 state and 2 does in most places. I think I think that keeps people out of the woods. You kill your buck, you're done, you move on. It opens up a spot for somebody else. That's good. Now there's states like West Virginia has like a 2 and 3 buck limit, and they need to fix that. That'll make, because West Virginia has good areas that can grow big deer to a large potential. And there is a pocket in West Virginia that's good, but the rest of West Virginia has a real liberal, $3. You're not going to get an old buck that lives past 2 years old very often when people are dropping $3 a year.
So let me ask you this question. When you say draw state, I'm not familiar with draw states and how that situation works. Is that just for out-of-state hunters, or is that
out-of-state? So Iowa has a draw system. It's considered the mecca of deer hunting in the United States. Iowa and Kansas. Kansas has a draw system now.
But it's just for out-of-state people.
Out-of-state. It keeps your out-of-state people from flooding the state.
Yeah.
And it makes the deer hunting better because there's less pressure, less guy per acre. So the deer are you're more likely to see an older deer when you have less people hunting in an area. You're not, everybody's not shooting every deer on the property.
So maybe Ohio does need to go to a draw state.
It would be beneficial, but you have to go to those meetings and you have to propose that stuff.
How would you feel if tags for deer and license go up in Ohio?
I would be okay as long as I would see it being used to purchase the public land, because really what you need a buck tag and 2 doe tags is about good for anybody. Now there's some farmland where
that runs you $90.
Now, right? As a resident,
it's $32 per tag.
$32.60. Yeah, around $90.
So around $90 if each hunter buys 2 doe tags and a buck tag, that's almost $100 per guy that goes into the ODNR. So you gotta ask the question: where's that money going to? What are they using that for? Is that just for them to fill their pockets, or can we figure out why we can't get any more private or public land for the guys that can't afford to buy and lease?
Right, and most of Ohio's public lands concentrated in southeast, east, and southern Ohio. There's like a quarter of the state that has all the public, and there's not a lot when you look at the rest of the state.
Well, I was gonna say it's hard to do that with, especially like out west, out past me. Once you get outside of 270, out off of 70, I mean it's pretty much farmland and flat.
Right, and it is hard. That's why all the public is in that area, and there's still a lot of land up for sale. We do the walk-on access thing here, and that's been great. I think that is one of the positive things the DNR has done for us. I think we need to look at the EHD problem in some of the areas. If there's areas in Ohio that's got wiped out so hard by EHD that they should probably not even have a season. It's been
that brings up the topic of feeders, though. I mean,
right.
That's what causes this, right?
Well, it's
one of those things where one gets it and then they go to that feeder, and then now every deer that comes to that feeder is going to have that same saliva.
Well, EHD is different. It's CWD. EHD and it can be caused by that. If you have a concentrated deer in one area, so a feeder does not help. And say there's a pond and the water level drops, these midges, the small non-seams, they bite the deer, especially velvet bucks, because their vessels are close to the antlers. At that time of year, in like August, where they still have a real soft tissue, they get on their antlers, bite it, gets infected. It's not 100% kill rate, but it's pretty dang close. That's why you find a lot of bucks dead versus does. Does, them little midges have a hard time getting through their fur and their hide. A buck has their blood vessels right there. So they're getting bit and infected a lot easier, but it will wipe out. I've heard on a 100-acre farm, I've heard them find 60, 70 dead deer of EHD, and they always find them by a creek because they got to go get water. They get like almost like a high fever, and they get dehydrated. They find them dead by water. It's happened in southeastern Ohio, probably the 2 worst cases back in like 05, and like this a couple years ago, and it really hurts the deer population. And the ODNR don't do a good job of looking at that, because they should really say, hey, this county, they drop dramatically in their harvest. And it's not just deer harvest, it's the age of the deer that gets shot. Deer have a hard time bouncing back to a high age structure when all there is to do is to shoot 2-3-year-old deer. And when all the 5 and 6-year-olds die and everybody's still taking a buck, you're shooting those 2 and 3-year-old deer, and you're not having a quality hunt in that area. So that's one problem. Another problem, like you said, with feeding, I think if feeding is legal, I have no problem with people doing it. Because it's if you don't do it, sometimes you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
But they should just wipe it out for the whole state. I know a lot. I think if most hunters went in there and was honest with themselves, they would like to see feeding gone, because then you can still do food plots, which most people do now anyways on private. And then that'll give people on public, it's just, you're hunting more natural deer movement, and it's spreading the deer out equally instead of concentrating it in one area, which I'm for, but and then there's the trail camera thing. That's a whole nother story. Well, I think it goes right along with this. If you have a guy out there with cell cameras, and he has 20 cell cameras on public, private, doesn't matter, and he is seeing a buck on this property, especially if it's private, I think that gives a property owner, and they think they own this deer, and all of a sudden you may have let 4 or 5 people hunt on your property, but all of a sudden there's a 200-inch deer on it. Do you think you're going to let 4 or 5 guys hunt on that property at that point? Nope. That's another problem. And I believe if you take cell cameras out of the equation, you also spread them numbers out a little bit more evenly. There's a lot of things you can do, but at the end, we need people like us going to those meetings, which we're just as guilty as anybody because we don't go. We need to get out there and go to those meetings and have our voices heard. That's just my opinion on the whole thing. So, anything else?
No, sounds good to me.
I just think we'll just find a topic like this once or twice a week, and we'll sit here and run through it because we're on our break anyways. We might as well, and I appreciate it. We're gonna do a bow raffle. I will tell you more about that on another. I'm gonna do a little YouTube short on it. Look for it. It's gonna be cool. Somebody's gonna get a chance at a really nice bow for about $10. So stay with us. We appreciate you watching the channel. Have a good day. Good? All right.